Expensive is relative. What's expensive for one person may not be expensive for someone else. And I realize we can talk about some fairly expensive gear on this channel, but even when I try to talk about affordable gear, I get comments like this. So that got me thinking, how much does it really cost to go backpacking? If you buy everything up front, depending on what you buy, yeah, it can be pretty expensive. But what we are forgetting is that this stuff can last for years, serving you multiple nights on the trail. And compared to a lot of things you can spend your money on, backpacking isn't that expensive. So today I'm gonna take a really high-end loadout featuring some of the nicest gear that I own. I'm gonna add up the total price tag and compare that to a few different popular vacations and hobbies to see how backpacking compares. But I also want to look at a budget loadout. All the same gear, but at affordable prices, and see how that compares. Then at the end, I'll give you some ideas on how to afford the gear you really want to buy. So let's check it out. Okay, so I put together some of the highest end gear that I own, and I'm gonna go through this real quick just to give you an idea of what's in here. Keep in mind that this isn't everything that I take backpacking, but it's most of the stuff that I take backpacking, including all the most expensive items. I got a Plex Solo for $700, Hyperlight Mountain Gear Backpack for $350, the Nemo Tensor for $180, Katabatic Gear Quilt for $400, the MSR Wind Burner for $180, Platypus Quick Draw for $45, the Z-Pax Rain Jacket for $300, Ghost Whisperer Puffy Jacket for $300. I've got the Zoleo Satellite Communicator for $200, Nightcore NU25 Headlamp for $36, and the Helinox Chair Zero for $130. Now, this entire loadout costs just under $3,000, which is no small chunk of change because this is high-end, ultralight, expensive backpacking gear. Now, let's say that you bought this straight out in one purchase, planning to use it on 3 different backpacking trips this year. Let's say you were going to do 2 weekend trips in the spring and 1 in the fall and 1 longer week-long trip in the summer for a total of 9 nights on the trail. That's about $322 a night just for the gear. But gear isn't the only cost. We've got food plus travel expenses. So let's assume that the fall and spring hike that you go on is somewhere local, somewhere that you can drive to within a couple hours. But the summer trip, you want to book airfare to go someplace really cool. So we'll add $17 per night for food plus $30 round trip for gas. Then for the big trip, we will add $400 for round trip airfare, $300 for a rental car, $100 for a night in a hotel after you finish your trip, and let's say $30 for a really good meal after you get out of the backcountry. Altogether, that adds another $1,043 to our total, bringing 1 year of backpacking to about $438 per night. Now, that's pretty expensive, but you have to keep in mind that this gear will last you longer than 1 year. So let's assume that you keep all this gear for 3 years without replacing anything. Assuming that you do about the same number and types of trips each year, that brings the cost down to just $223 per night. Now, let's compare that to a single trip to Disney World where you will pay up to $316 per person per night according to mousehacking.com. Or if you want to go to the beach, according to infotraveltrips.com, it'll cost about $390 per night. Or let's say you want to go skiing, according to newski.com, you can pay an average of $490 per night. Now, those are all average costs. Obviously, you can spend more or less on vacations like that, but the same is true of backpacking. For instance, let's assume that you want to go the budget route. This is a really good budget setup that I've done in a video before. Everything in here is still high quality and ultralight, all for less than $800. If you're curious about what all I got in here, I'll put a link to the video in the description below. Now, if you took all this gear on the same 2 weekend trips and 1 big summer trip, the total cost comes out to $145 per night over the course of 3 years. Or let's say that you really want a penny pinch, but still do 2 big weekend trips and a big summer trip, but you've decided that you want to stay within driving distance for all 3. That would bring the high-end gear down to about $127 per night and the budget gear down to just $50 per night over the same course of 3 years. Also, keep in mind that you don't have to buy all this gear at once. To get started, you can buy just 1 or 2 pieces of gear and then borrow or rent the rest, slowly buying the rest of your gear over time. This is how most people I know built their expensive high-end kits, 1 or 2 pieces of gear at a time over the course of several years. You can also look for used gear, you can look for outlet gear, and you can look for big sales during Christmas time, Black Friday, Also, there's usually really big sales in the spring, right before summer backpacking starts. If you do all those or a combination of just a few, chances are that you can get some really good gear at some extraordinary prices. And 3 years isn't the expiration date, and 3 trips a year isn't your limit. Those are just arbitrary numbers that I came up with. The truth is that I have gear that has lasted me over a decade and is still going strong. Keep your gear that long, go more often, and you will save even more money. So compared to the cost of a camper trailer or a camper van or any other number of hobbies, backpacking is actually pretty cheap. But I'm curious, how often do you go backpacking and how much do you think you spend per night on the trail? Drop me a comment and let me know. Thank you for watching and subscribing. This is my first video after hitting 100,000 subscribers. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. It means more to me than you realize. Be sure to like, subscribe, and do all those other things if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for watching. Is that true? $145?